Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The global trade system, built over decades, has been violently shaken. On October 2, 2025, 7 nations halted all exports to the United States, marking a historic escalation that could redraw the world's economic map. This isn't just about goods and services. It's a clash of economic philosophies and a sign of waning American-led globalization. The move is a direct response to sweeping U.S. tariffs and signals a profound loss of faith in American leadership. As alliances shift and the world grows more multipolar, the future of globalization hangs in the balance. The world watches, uncertain if this is the end of an era or the start of a new, fractured order. The crisis began with the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs on August 7, 2025, targeting over 90 countries. The goal: revive American manufacturing, protect domestic industries, and slash the trade deficit. Tariffs soared to their highest in nearly a century, challenging decades of open market consensus. The administration uses tariffs as leverage, rewarding allies, punishing rivals, and dismantling multilateral trade frameworks. Critics warn this approach ignores the realities of global supply chains and risks stoking inflation, harming U.S. businesses and consumers. The policy is seen as a blunt weapon, sparking global retaliation and threatening economic stability. The world is left scrambling to adapt to a new, unpredictable trade landscape. The new tariffs have fractured the global economy, sending shockwaves through every continent and industry. Once seamless supply chains are now tangled in red tape, and the rules of international commerce are being rewritten almost overnight. The world, once bound together by trade, is now splintering into rival blocs, each scrambling to protect its own interests. This upheaval has created a patchwork of winners and losers. Some companies and countries are thriving, seizing new opportunities as old competitors falter. Others, however, are struggling to survive, facing layoffs, factory closures, and plummeting profits. The divide between those who benefit and those who suffer grows wider by the day. In Southeast Asia, economies that once relied on open access to global markets now face crippling tariffs. Factories that fueled the region's growth are slowing production, and workers worry about their future as orders dry up. The promise of prosperity is suddenly in doubt. Meanwhile, Switzerland and other export-driven nations are hit with punishing rates, forcing businesses to rethink their strategies. Long-standing trade relationships are under strain, and uncertainty clouds boardrooms across Europe. The European Union, after tense negotiations, managed to secure a painful but stable 15% tariff. While this deal offers some predictability, it comes at a steep cost, with many industries warning of lost competitiveness and shrinking markets. Allies like the UK and Japan, leveraging their diplomatic ties, secured slightly better terms. Yet even these nations are not immune to the broader uncertainty, as investors and businesses brace for further disruptions. Mexico, for now, enjoys a temporary reprieve. Its industries breathe a sigh of relief, but the future remains uncertain as negotiations continue and political winds shift. China's fragile tariff pause is set to expire soon, threatening a major escalation that could reverberate across the globe. Businesses and governments alike are on edge, watching the clock tick down to a possible trade war. The U.S. now openly links trade policy to foreign policy, pressuring countries like India to make difficult choices between economic partners and energy security. For many nations, the cost of picking sides could be enormous. Tariffs have become powerful tools of geopolitical coercion, deepening global instability and fueling tensions not just in boardrooms, but also on the streets and even at sea. The risk of conflict, economic or otherwise, has never felt more real. Analysts warn that this new era of protectionism could accelerate the fragmentation of the global system, undermining decades of progress toward economic integration and cooperation. The fate of U.S.-China negotiations now hangs in the balance. The outcome will determine whether the current storm of tariffs and uncertainty subsides, or if it intensifies into a full-blown hurricane that reshapes the world order for years to come. In a bold and unprecedented move, 7 nations have simultaneously halted all exports to the United States, initiating a complete economic boycott that has sent shockwaves through global markets. This is not just a symbolic gesture. It's a coordinated stand against what these countries see as unfair economic pressure and protectionist policies. Facing tariffs of 40% or more on their goods, these countries determined that continued trade with the US was no longer viable. The cost of doing business had simply become too high, eroding profits and threatening the stability of their own industries. For many exporters, the new tariffs meant the difference between survival and collapse. By acting together as a unified bloc, these nations amplify their message to the world. They're not just protesting US policies, they're signaling that alternatives to American economic dominance are possible. Their unity at international summits and trade meetings demonstrates a willingness to forge new alliances and reshape the global trading landscape. This bold action could inspire other countries to form parallel trading systems, bypassing traditional US-centered networks. However, the risks are immense. Job losses, factory closures, and economic upheaval are already being felt in both exporting and importing nations. Workers face uncertainty, and entire industries are at risk of being upended. The ultimate success of this strategy depends on whether these countries can quickly find new markets for their goods and reduce their dependence on the US economy. Companies are scrambling to reroute shipments, negotiate new deals, and adapt to a rapidly changing trade environment. The search for alternative partners is now a matter of survival. It's a high-stakes gamble, reflecting deep fractures in the global order. Financial markets are reacting with volatility, and negotiations behind closed doors are tense. The world is witnessing a dramatic shift in the balance of economic power, with uncertainty looming over future trade relations. The world is watching closely to see if this act of defiance will spark a broader movement. News outlets, social media, and public forums are abuzz with debate and speculation. Will other nations join the boycott, or will the pressure force a return to the negotiating table? One thing is certain, the economic consequences of this standoff will be felt for years to come, shaping the future of global trade and the livelihoods of millions around the world. Amid the chaos, Canada stands out for its strategic diplomacy. Leveraging the USMCA, Canada shielded most exports from new tariffs, highlighting the value of strong trade agreements. Some Canadian goods still face targeted tariffs, but the core economic relationship remains intact. Canada's approach shows the importance of diversifying trade and securing formal pacts. As others are locked out, Canada's stability is a model for middle-power nations. The world is dividing. Those with protected US access, those paying a high price, and those shut out entirely. Canada's experience proves that foresight and strong institutions can provide crucial protection. The tariff storm is hitting American consumers hard. Prices on electronics, clothing, and food are rising. Businesses face tough choices. Absorb costs, pass them to consumers, or overhaul supply chains. The uncertainty is toxic for investment and growth, threatening to tip the global economy into recession. The trade conflict is also forcing countries to pick sides, risking the creation of rival economic blocs. The integrated world economy is fragmenting, raising the risk of future geopolitical conflict. Economist Bert Hoffman warns that while tariffs bring clarity, the long-term damage could be immense. The world faces a new era of economic and political division. China anticipated the trade war, restricting exports of rare earth elements in 2024, a critical blow to the US. These materials are vital for everything from smartphones to advanced military hardware. China controls nearly all global processing, giving it immense leverage. By banning export technology, China aims to lock in its monopoly and thwart alternatives. The US defense sector is acutely vulnerable, scrambling to build a domestic supply chain. Despite investments, US output is dwarfed by China's. China's rare earth strategy is a powerful card in the ongoing trade war. The US faces a race against time to secure its own supply. Experts agree, today's global trade landscape is more turbulent than ever before. We've entered a confrontational era where the rules that once governed international commerce are being rewritten in real time. The world's economies, once tightly interwoven by decades of globalization, now find themselves navigating a maze of new barriers, shifting alliances, and mounting uncertainty. Economist Bert Hoffman observes that tariffs and trade restrictions have replaced the unpredictability of open markets with a new kind of costly certainty. For businesses, This means adapting to a landscape where sudden policy changes can upend supply chains overnight. Companies are forced to rethink sourcing, production, and even their long-term strategies as the cost of doing business rises and the risks multiply. Analysts warn that the growing trend of linking trade to foreign policy, such as India's deepening ties with Russia, can have far-reaching consequences. When trade becomes a tool for political leverage, it risks alienating traditional partners and pushing countries toward rival blocs, particularly those led by U.S. adversaries. This realignment could reshape the global balance of power for years to come. The rare earths issue is a prime example of how economic and security interests now collide. With these critical minerals essential for everything from smartphones to advanced weaponry, the U.S. faces urgent calls to invest in alternative supply chains. The fear is that dependence on a single supplier could leave entire industries and national security vulnerable to disruption. Economic tools are increasingly wielded for political ends. Recent halts in arms exports to Israel, prompted by the Gaza conflict, highlight how trade and diplomacy are now deeply intertwined. These actions send powerful signals, but they also risk escalating tensions and complicating already fragile relationships. This weaponization of trade adds layers of complexity to the future of global commerce. Negotiations grow more fraught, businesses face greater unpredictability, and the flow of goods slows as new checks and restrictions are imposed. The world is shifting from an era of interdependence to one defined by strategic rivalry. Major powers are drawing new lines, both economically and militarily, as they compete for influence and security. In this new age of uncertainty, the stakes for economic and geopolitical stability have never been higher. Every decision, every policy shift reverberates across continents, reshaping the future of global trade and the world order itself. The era of open markets and deep global integration is over. Sweeping tariffs, export halts, and resource battles are shifting the global order. Institutions like the WTO seem powerless as economic might replaces consensus. The risk of tit-for-tat escalation looms, threatening growth and deepening divides. Yet, crisis may force a rethink, spurring resilient, regional supply chains and new alliances. The future will be shaped by choices in Washington, Beijing, Brussels, and beyond. The world stands on edge, waiting to see which path we choose.